So elements of this class are taken from a podcast that I did, one of my first podcasts called Kate's Take. This is Kate's Take Reloaded is actually what this was originally made for, written for, and all that kind of good stuff. That probably needs a little bit of explanation to some of you of why I did a podcast called Kate's Take, and I start these by saying, hello, I'm Dr. Leah Leach, right? Doesn't seem like my name. So for over a decade, I took on the stage name of Kate Chaplin. The Kate came from Katharine Hepburn. The Chaplin came from Charlie Chaplin. These were two film mentors for me that I would never live up to, but I would always be trying to live up to earn the right to use their name. I did it for myself. I did it because I had, I think I stopped counting at 300, over 300 or 400 rejection letters for screenplays and books and short stories and writing. And I was in a major shame spiral and I wanted to reinvent myself. And I was reading The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. And in that book, he talked about when a person in India wants to change their life, their cultural shift is to change the way they dress, to change their job, and to change their name, and to start over. And so I went, let's try that. So I changed the way that I dressed. I said I was a filmmaker and I was going to be making films because a filmmaker makes films. And I changed my name. I changed my name to a DBA, a doing business as, to Kate Chaplin, because Kate Chaplin didn't have any failures. Kate Chaplin didn't have any rejection letters. Kate Chaplin could do anything. That was the idea. That was my mental mindset that I could take on. It was only for me. It wasn't for anybody else. I still was very open of like, hey, it's not my real name. So, so for over a decade, I was Kate Chaplin. I did all my stuff, movies, books, podcasts, creative stuff. And then I retired. I retired from filmmaking. I focused fully on Gal's Guide to the Galaxy. Gal's Guide is a corporation. It needs to have my legal name. I was also awarded an honorary doctorate. That has to be in my real legal name. And so I thought, you know what? It's time to get to know who Leah is. It's time to get to fully embrace that name and that being. So I went back to my real name. So that's the story behind that. So the Kate's Take show was a podcast that my friend Will Derringer asked me to do. We did about 50 episodes on movies that changed my life. And then when that ended, Gal's Guide was started and we started a podcast network, and Kate's Take Reloaded was a glorious produced episode that was on there, or a series of shows. I think we did 28 different episodes of movies that changed my life. So in this class, we are going to talk specifically about the Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot. Yes, you pronounce the T. It's weird. We're going to talk about the universal lessons that are in the movie. We are going to talk about the myths that are in there, the symbolism, the meaning. We're going to dig deep. We're going to dig deep into the different things that you can take out of the Wonder Woman movie and incorporate into your life, or to ponder for a bit, or to absorb in any way, shape, or form. So some of these are deeply personal to me. They are things that I saw because that's where I was at the time. And it's not necessarily, everybody's, but at the same time, I put it out there because maybe it's a starting off point for you, or maybe it resonates with you as well. So let's get in to the movie Wonder Woman 2017 and dig into it. So at the start, Diana, Wonder Woman, is the only child on the island, okay? I was the firstborn grandchild, so I do kind of dig into this a little bit. There is a little bit of my psyche going the only kid at family gatherings kind of scenario. My first cousin is 10 years younger than me. So I was very much the only kid at family gatherings for a while. I was definitely the only girl for a good long time. So family gatherings were pretty much just sitting around a large table, watching the adults talk. That was pretty much what it was. For Diana, they are talking about the war between the Amazons and Ares. And this war might never come, but they need to be prepared for it. So that's what the adults are always talking about. So I understand Hippolyta, her mother. not wanting to let her daughter be anything other than a child, to let her have her childhood and not worry about the war and the world outside and Aries and all that kind of good stuff. I related to that, to not wanting to talk about, boys with my daughters yet, only to find out that that was going to be a hurdle as early as kindergarten. I thought I had more time. I wish many times that I had a sister like Antiope. Antiope is Robin Wright Penn. So Princess Buttercup, by the way, becomes a warrior of the Amazons. That's my childhood right there. So like I saw Princess Leia become a general, and I saw Princess Bride become an Amazon. Okay, anyway, sorry. Childhood accomplished right there. So Antiope trains Diana as a kid in secret, so that she will be ready when Ares returns, because it is a foregone conclusion. It does feel like a metaphor for preparing your daughters to protect themselves against danger, especially the dangers of men. That's the vibe that I get from it. The statistics of sexual abuse is 1 in 3. It's horrible. And I'll give you a minute and I'll give you how it terrifies me. I'm a mom with 2 daughters. So there's the 3. So I'm the 1 in the 3. And I want to have this blind hope that because the statistic is already on me, that will protect them. But in talking to many other women through the course of Gal's Guide and seeing the Me Too movement, that gap is probably actually smaller than 1 in 3, because not everybody reports and not everybody talks about it. So if I and my daughters could go to an island of only women and feel safe, we would. We very much would. But in the movie, even in this paradise, they fear and they prepare for Ares. Sure, yes, a god, but also the male version of destruction. It's still a worry, a weight on them that they are worried about. So Hippolyta, there's a T in there, fears that the stronger that Diana gets, Ares will be able to find her, almost like a tracking beacon, if you think of it, all right? The ping, ping, ping is going to be louder the more powerful she gets. There is not a parent out there that doesn't fear that there is a time that their daughter will be sexually attractive to boys and men. And generally speaking, fathers will do this joking thing, like they're going to go get a shotgun and they're going to protect the family and against suitors and all that kind of good stuff. And also, generally speaking, mothers start shrinking. They start getting smaller. They start to try to succumb to the overall fear. And they're always kind of like, not always, but many times it's, please let the guy she dates, be a person with good intentions and a good person. As parents, a lot of times we put the focus on the boys' intentions and we're not preparing our daughters for battle. So Antiope says when training Diana, harder than any other Amazon, she says, never let your guard down. You expect the battle to be fair. The battle will never be fair. And that line is a motto for like career. The battle will never be fair. But it's also certainly true for relationships. I mean, books like The Art of War compare battle to business. I don't like to think of relationships as a battle, but I see the connection. I really do. I mean, I've been married for over 20 years and generally we have a peace treaty. But we do have moments of battle. And in those moments of battle in a relationship, there is no winner. Both are hurt, just like war. So when Steve Trevor arrives on the island, of course he was going to be in the movie, and of course I was going to groan, but Chris Pine's trying so hard in this role, and I really do appreciate his awkwardness and stuff to make it adorkable. So thank you for that, but frickin' this character is horrible. But Steve Trevor arrives on the island and he brings war to the island. Of course he does. Thank you, Steve. He's the gift that keeps on giving. He explains to the community of women who have been preparing for the god of war about Ares. He brings the war to them. So he explains to them that beyond the barrier, there is a war to end all wars. Wow. That's kind of what they've been preparing for their whole life. So it has already killed so many, and it is on the brink of killing even more. So Diana sees this connection right away that Ares must be behind it, okay? Queen Mother forbids it from her going out to the outside man's world. Steve even understands that decision. He wouldn't want anybody that he cares about going anywhere near the war. He also tells her his father's advice. So his father's advice is, quote, if you see something wrong happening in the world, you can either do nothing or you can do something. And I've already done nothing. And I do like that. I think it's a powerful line. I think it's vague enough for it to mean whatever you want it to mean. It is very situational from situation to situation. So for Diana, it is her call to action to betray her mother and get the God Killer sword and go with Steve to stop Ares and to stop the war. Now, when Diana goes and gets the sword, the God Killer sword, there is this beautiful but very small, wonderful moment that is in the movie. And really, if you blink, you kind of miss it. It's Diana's self-doubt. There's a moment that she goes to cross the precipice and she looks down and she stops at the cliff and she has this look of, can I do this? I really don't know if I can do this. And Antiope noticed this flaw of self-doubt in her training because Antiope said, you are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you know. Now, this is probably like her bracelets come off and she has even more power, but we'll see if the movies do that. But before leaping across that gorge to the resting place of the God Killer sword, she hesitates. She doubts her abilities, but she finds power in what she is doing and she tries anyway. In doing so, she almost falls completely to her death. But she discovers an untapped strength, right? She smashes her hands in and she climbs up the tower. It's not until doing the thing that you actually find your strength or weakness for it. It's weird, but it's true. Now, the sword is a MacGuffin. I forgot to ask how many people have never seen the movie, but by the way, there's spoilers like all the way throughout this. But the sword is a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is a desired object that the hero thinks they need to win against the villain, but they don't actually need it, okay? The sword, as we find out later, is not a god killer. She is. Diana, Wonder Woman, is the embodiment of the god killer. She was created by Zeus to be able to defeat Ares, right? Her power to defeat him also is what makes her a target, makes her that homing beacon, right? So the sword, the god killer sword, can symbolize this duality of nature, okay? Or, the actual metaphor, a double-edged sword, okay? Duality of nature. It also can be very brazen that she's taking something phallic into man's world. I'm just saying. You can also just put that out there. So before we get into man's world, I want to talk about the fog that is over the mascara. Sorry, the mascara, but I like saying the mascara. The fog, so that bubble protection that is over it. So I work at Gal's Guide, and generally I'm in the library, if there's internet. But I can certainly say, through my experience with Gal's Guide, there is a fog over women's lives. To some extent, it is a protection, but also to another extent, it's actually a barrier that people don't brave to cross over into. Also, some just simply can't see it. I joke that Gal's Guide is kryptonite to a lot of men because they simply don't even see it. Like, I've personally invited guys I know to come to certain events that I know that they would get a kick out of. And they're like, I didn't even pay attention, figuring that that was just a women's only thing. Just because it has the word gals in it, like, they just stop listening, they stop reading, they stop seeing. But I also hear from women that they don't want to be seen as a supporter of any kind of feminism. They're worried about the SJW, social justice warrior label that gets thrown around by pretty much just trollers. But they're worried that they might upset others, and they worry that it might make them a target in their life. So when women focus on women's issues, a fog is created. And some can see through that barrier just fine, and just some can't. It does bug me because I have spent most of my life studying about men, and I've had no problem with it. So, especially learning about filmmaking, trust me, all of my schooling was learning about male filmmakers and male writers and the male point of view. So that's just kind of, what I'm used to, because as Bonnie lovingly says, the default is male. so yes, I just like people to learn from. I really, really do. But Gal's Guide puts a spotlight on women's voices, offering stories and opportunities to learn about women's history because it's hidden in a fog. Because sometimes people just don't see it, and it's just not covered. So female role models should be equally celebrated among all genders. But we're just not there yet. But you know what? The Gal's Guide Library is trying. We're doing our part. So back to Wonder Woman. When Diana sees man's world for the first time, it's in the shape of jolly old London, and her response is, it's hideous. So Diana's naivete and her curiousness is freaking adorable. Also, Steve is protecting her and trying to get her to fit in because, that's the pressure of fitting in. Clothes are a big part of it. It's also a movie, so visually, clothes are very easy to use that as a dynamic. When Diana asks what women wear to battle, Steve says they don't. And then he's cut off because luckily Diana sees a baby and is totally sidetracked by a baby. Because that would have been a very interesting conversation had it kept going. But women nowadays do go into frontline battle. Even back in history, when women were not allowed to sign up for the military, they would still dress up as men and serve during wartime. Taking this metaphor even further, women are fighting a different kind of battle every day. And sometimes the clothes that we wear are a reflection of a battle uniform. Wonder Woman has her battle uniform. Etta Candy has her secretary uniform. Steve Trevor has his spy uniform. Our clothes in movies and in life reflect our battles. And this is shown even more when Samir and Charlie and Chief kind of join into the story as well. So now, Etta Candy. Oh my God, I love Etta Candy. Etta Candy is the secretary, and she is adorable. She says to Diana, I really like her, and it turns out I really like Etta Candy. So Etta Candy in the comic books is not that cool. She's kind of annoying. So in the movie, Etta Candy is like just absolutely wonderful. Etta Candy is this middle of the road feminist who wants to do better for women. However, she is really trying to survive at her place in the world, which includes sucking up the best she possibly can for survival. What I love about her very, very brief character is she still comes off honest. She also represents us bigger gals. So I love that when you've got Gal Gadot, who's just like chiseled out of marble. That girl is perfect, and I love it. But then you get those little big girl jokes, which are very, very nice, because she explains to Diana what a corset is, that a corset keeps our tummies in. And when Diana asks, why would you want to do that? She responds with, only a woman with no tummy would ask that question. Yeah, exactly. So when Diana is confused on how women fight in period costuming, right? Etta says, fight, we use our principles. And her body language reads that as a person that is still struggling with the answer, that she's not opposed to fighting, and she knows it's crap that we fight with our principles, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's the answer. That's all we got right now. It sucks. But fighting is just around the corner. And Diana and Steve are followed. Now, the director of Wonder Woman is Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins describes this alley scene when they duck into an alley as an homage to the alley scene in Richard Donner's Superman, but it's gender reversed. So if you remember the scene with Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder when they're in the alley and Superman has a gun pointed at him, but he's pretending to be Clark Kent because, of course, he has glasses on. So the scene in Wonder Woman when they duck into the alley is supposed to be an homage of that. Now, the gun is still pointed at the dude in both of the scenes, but the act of the rejection is by Steve instead of Lois Lane. And the bullet is stopped by Wonder Woman, of course, instead of Superman. The big difference is Superman is hiding his powers from Lois. Wonder Woman's not hiding her powers. So it's quite interesting if you think about it in terms of a cross compare. So the streets of London and a clothing boutique are the first steps into man's world for Diana, but the real entry point into the world of men is behind a door that is full of men negotiating an armistice to the war. So Steve enters that door and he tells Diana, stay here. Okay, all right. I can go all mythological and I can say it's Pandora's box. I can also say it's Hero's Journey if you ever want me to go off on a beautiful explanation of what Hero's Journey is by Joseph Campbell. I totally can. I've done hours on it. That the door is a threshold. It is a threshold to her journey to the unknown world. I could even say it's showing Diana's character is a warrior who doesn't want to be told what to do. But those two words of stay here make me sink into myself. Like it really irritates me. I'm sick of the word stay here. And you're going to probably end up hearing this in a lot in TV and movies now. It'll probably like jump out at you. Why did they say stay here? And you'll be like, oh, that's right, because Leah talked about it. It's too common in TV shows and movies. Basically what it is the hero is about to do some hero-like shit and tells a weaker character, stay here. And most times they do. And the reason why it bugs me is because it's usually a dude saying it to a woman. Usually. In X-Men Apocalypse, it's Beast saying it to Mystique. And I'm sorry, between Beast and Mystique, who's more powerful? In Terminator, it's a cop saying it to Linda Hamilton. Once again, between this random cop that has no name and Linda Hamilton, who's more powerful? In Return of the Jedi, it's Han saying it to Luke and Leia. And in Stranger Things, in one episode, I stopped counting after 4 because Hopper kept telling the kids, and especially Eleven, the powerful one, to stay here. Like, I'm just like, Hopper, you are on my list. I can't, like, I'm sorry. She is the best weapon you have, but stay here. Hide behind a rock. I mean, oh, please. Anyway, I know it's a protection thing. I know that, okay? But I also know that I've heard it too many damn times in my own life and in movies. It's a statement of power. It is designed to be demobilizing. And it comes off as I am more equipped than you in this situation. And most times they're wrong. It wrecks the team dynamic. And it screams, I'm going to go be a hero by myself now because men don't need to work together. That is generally what I hear. I'm really personally sick of it because I don't want those crucial moments when fight or flight response like kicks in real life and a woman decides to stay here because they've heard it so many times. It's absorbed from culture, from the entertainment that they have seen, that their internal becomes, well, I'm supposed to stay here because that's what I've heard and that's what I've seen. And if you can see it, you can be it. Right. So in the context of the Wonder Woman scene, you have a trained warrior who is designed to stop war, who believes that the only way the war can be stopped is behind this door. Like that's where the war can end, like right there behind that door. And it can end without bloodshed. Yet she is asked to stay outside the door. So the audience wants and needs her to go through that door. We really want her to, but when she does, we are reminded that she's not just an Amazon. More importantly, she's a woman. The conversation stops the second she goes through the door. As soon as she's recognized as a woman, the mouth gasps and somebody utters, "There's a woman here." Oh, and it's quickly followed by, "Get her out." Right? So Diana shows us it's okay to walk through that door, but she also showed us how fast we can be removed from that room. And I'm sure you're thinking, oh, this is a different time. This is also a movie. This is a cultural perception of women in power was different. We're talking about World War I, and we're kind of talking about the 1910-ish. Well, just a few years ago, I mean, Uber was sued for sexual discrimination, gender discrimination. The film industry is still only 5% women in the room where it happens with women leaders. So the gatekeepers are still holding these gender stereotypes and this idiotic double standard when 51% of the population is women, and yet we're not in the room. So Diana is eventually allowed into a private meeting because Steve vouches for her. Thanks, Steve. I feel like I have to like give him props when he does good. Anyway, but he says they are working together. Now, no one in this room can figure out the two languages that are in Dr. Poison's notebook that can help end the whole freaking war. But somehow Diana can. Again, most qualified person. The question does arise, the question doesn't arise, how does she know this? They don't like where'd you study? Like none of the actual questions. They say, who is this woman? Like that's the question that they ask. She's identified as Steve's secretary, which neither Diana nor I like in the scenario. Then again, I'm not supposed to. The audience is not supposed to like that answer. It's cringing moments in a movie like Stay Here and Diana being called a very good secretary that are brilliant because they are a combination of the movie sequence reflecting today's culture, but also making us go with, that ain't right, let's change that. So cringing moments are sometimes good. They are designed to imprint believing that Diana is the most qualified person in the room, but only her gender is stopping her from being listened to. So it is subtle as hell, but when the colonel who told Steve and Diana to get out of the room then changes into a 180 and says, if this woman can read it, maybe we should hear what she has to say. What? So it's a cringing moment followed by a teaching moment where this is how you make a difference. Unfortunately, it is kind of, by somebody we don't like. But anyway, but when a person, regardless of gender or race or mythical background, is allowed to speak, new information is learned, but politics gets in the way because politics always gets in the way. So Steve and Diana don't want to see any more people die, but the brass wants nothing to do with any of this. They want to sign the armistice and they want to be done with it. Both are right from their point of view, but politics is all about power first and not about people. That's always what politics is. So Diana calls them out and shames them, but Steve escorts her out. Even though Steve gets her out of the room, he sees that there was no chance in changing their mind. It was just going to waste their time. Instead, he's going to take Diana to the front and they're going to stop the gas anyway. So for that, they need reinforcements, right? So the team in Wonder Woman is something I did not expect to see, but I absolutely love it so much because they are diverse. Thank goodness for diversity. You have Samir, who's Arabic. You have Chief, who is Native American. You have Charlie, who is Scottish. And then you got the American Steve Trevor, who, I can't say I love, but it's Steve. But it reminds me of one of my favorite feminist films ever, The Wizard of Oz. I love the comparison to it. So Dorothy follows the yellow brick road on a quest to the wizard to send her home, right? Diana goes on a quest to find Ares and stop the war. When Dorothy meets up with the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion, they work together to defeat the Wicked Witch and learn about the truth of the Wizard of Oz. When Diana teams up with Steve and Samir, Chief and Charlie, they work together to stop Dr. Poison, who is called a witch at one point. They're trying to stop the witch and learn the truth about Ares instead of learning the truth about the Wizard of Oz. So unlike the Wizard of Oz, Diana has to prove her worth to Samir and Charlie because they're not willing to go to the front for a wee lass and no money. So no matter how smitten Samir is by her, he still needs convincing. So when Sir Patrick shows up, knowing that they're going to defy command, and he says it is honorable, he also knows that nobody will do anything without money, so he supplies it. And so why does he do this? Okay, all right, so of course the major spoilers are, if you haven't seen the movie, Sir Patrick is Ares, so he's hiding as Ares. And so he is helping out this group of rebels in the war. Why would he do that if he is the villain? He does this so he can have Edda in his office and know where they are and know what they're doing. He can also keep an eye on Diana, whether he knows or not that she is the god killer. You know what I mean? He can still keep an eye on her. He still doesn't know much about her. And eventually on the phone, he finds out about it. But also, I like this because as a student of history that I am, many companies funded both sides of the war. So the idea of Ares funding the rebels that are trying to stop him, but yet at the same time, like being on the other side of it, of continuing the war. I mean, it's too lengthy to go into a major rabbit hole here, but look into Standard Oil and General Motors and Ford Motor Company and Hugo Boss, and they made a lot of money during World War I and World War II because they funded both sides of the war. So, and you'll see that that quick scene in Wonder Woman is grounded in real history. So, after a wonderful ice cream snack, the team is on their way to the front. And on the way, Diana sees the horrors of war. She sees the wounded soldiers. She sees the innocents trying to flee. It is this buildup of emotion. But first, it's a very teachable moment. The team arrives at the camp and they meet Chief. All right. They shake hands with Chief, and Chief speaks in his native tongue, and there are no subtitles on the screen. It's very important to notice. They don't translate it. It's quite beautiful. Even though we don't know what is said in that moment, Diana does. She responds with, "And I am Diana." So a couple of things that really tugs at my heartstrings in that moment. Number one, of the many languages she knows how to speak, an Indigenous American language is one of them. And number two, not being translated puts the focus on the language and not the words, because that's where the importance should be, because it was about the language. It wasn't about what he said. It's so important because representation really, really matters. There was an article by Indian Country Today that interviewed Eugene Braverock, who plays Chief, and he speaks in Blackfoot in that scene. The character introduces himself as Nappy, the Blackfoot demigod, who is a trickster and a storyteller. So that's actually what he says in that sequence. But it actually kind of goes beyond that with Eugene Braverock in the role. With the support of the director, Patty Jenkins, he chose his own wardrobe to reflect and to honor his own culture. So he got to decide what he wore and how he represented himself. So just imagine for a second being a Native American of descent and seeing yourself actually represented on screen in a huge, big budget movie. It's a small moment, but it's a teachable moment, and the teaching continues. So when Diana and Chief talk when the rest of the team is asleep, Chief calls the bombs in the distance from the front the evening hate. And it might be the best description of war I have ever heard. Diana asks Chief why he is there. And he says he does not fight. So Diana assumes that it is for money. But as we see later, Chief actually is turning down gifts and money from the townspeople. So he says it's about money, but it's not really about money. He talks about how the last war took everything from his people, and Chief has seen war. He knows how bad it can be. And he says, at least here, I'm free. And that is a loaded question, because what does that say about America when our native people have to go to another country's war zone to feel free? So it's a lot to unpack, but it's a powerful scene. So now they are on the trek to the front. They are following that yellow brick road, if you will, to the front. Diana is conflicted because she wants to help everyone she sees. The animals, the soldier with his leg shot off, the crying children. It's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to try to stuff down. So they arrive at No Man's Land, okay? And No Man's Land, it's a very good place to talk about why this film took place during World War I, because the comic books took place during World War II. All right. The reason why is an interview with Entertainment Weekly. The screenwriter Alan Heinberg explained why World War I. He said, quote, "It was the first time we had automated war. The machine gun was a new invention. Gas was used for the first time. Horrors were released every day. So it was also the very first time that No Man's Land was used in wartime context." So that is why this movie takes place in World War I, is because of the context. So Steve explains No Man's Land as no man can cross it. They have tried for a year, but they have made up very little ground. It's not something you cross. It is impossible. The team is actually trying to make its way through the trenches to cross another crossing point, but that is about a day away. And Diana has seen enough. She has ignored enough. And to use Steve's words, she tried doing nothing, and now she wants to do something. I feel like the whole setting of Wonder Woman in World War I was set up for this moment at No Man's Land. And I didn't prepare myself of how powerful that it would be. In fact, tomorrow's class is completely just about this scene and how this scene is a metaphor. So I will kind of give you a little bit of a taste for it. I did joke before, and I probably will continue to joke, that seeing Wonder Woman holding up her shield and deflecting bullets is like deflecting internet comments. So that's kind of like a little bit of a joke, but at the same time, not really. But it is way more than that. Seeing her get out of the trench and block all of that heavy fire is so much more of a metaphor. It's entering a career field that's dominated by men. It's joining a mom's club and preparing to defend your parenting style. It's dating in your 40s. It's having an opinion. It's existing in a world that you think you don't belong in. It's standing up for what's right. It's doing something to make a better world when nobody's paying attention. That standing up and holding your ground and taking the bullets, it's being a leader, it's being a parent, it's teaching a class, it's blazing a trail, it's taking fire so that somebody else has a chance to make up more ground. So to get a little bit more metaphoric in the path of No Man's Land, it is a metaphor for human life. You stand up for something or for someone and the bullets start slow and you deflect them, right? She just kind of like bing, bing, bing. But then you pick up the pace, you gain more ground, and all of a sudden the bullets are more consistent until soon they absolutely stop you in your tracks. You work harder at defending yourself than you do moving forward. And that's when people come to your aid. That's when they see you taking fire and they draw off the attack. Divide and conquer. The invisible line moves just a little bit more. You break that glass ceiling. No one does this alone. There is no stay here, right? So this strategy has been used for good and evil throughout history, but it starts the same. One person stands up. One person stands up and a movement is then activated. The unfortunate part is hate is always an element in this. There is that duality of good and evil. be it that justice for peace or a god of war. It's that complex dynamic that is Wonder Woman. It is that double-edged sword, if you will. After No Man's Land has been won and the town is saved, we get to know the team just a little bit better, okay? We get to know that Samir wanted to be an actor, but he says he was the wrong color. It's pretty freaking deep, and it's also pretty freaking sad. Samir also teaches Diana another layer of empathy when we know she has been seeing people suffering. However, she takes people as their labels. She takes it as a marksman who isn't able to shoot. And so she is seeing people suffer and nobody doing anything. Samir explains not everyone gets to not everyone gets to be what they want all the time. And then he explains everyone is fighting their own battle just as you are fighting yours. And it's a wonderful, wonderful lesson. So the boys talk about the belief that Ludendorff is Aries and the conclusion that Diana has come to when Steve is on the phone with Sir Patrick. So, you know, that guy heard all of it. He knows that she thinks he's Aries. So Samir and Chief think that Diana believe Diana. They actually believe her that Ludendorff is Aries. Charlie does not. Steve is not sure, showing that believing a woman, even if she is Wonder Woman, is a little bit difficult, apparently. But by the way, Diana wants to go to a gala because, you know, who doesn't want to go to a gala? But Steve tells her to stay put. Stay here, yes, again. And she doesn't. Woohoo! So she puts those swaying skills to use that Steve taught her, and she dances with Ludendorff, and she hears him spout out, "War gives men purpose." Diana hears what she needs to hear, and she is about to strike and kill him when Steve stops her and says, "But what if you're wrong?" They still need to figure out where the gas is, as that is actually going to hurt more people. The gas is then released into the village. Diana is too late, and she blames Steve for not believing in her. Believe in me. So Wonder Woman battles Ludendorff, who is high on what I call crack, because he cracks it, and then he inhales it, and then he turns like a different color, and then he's all powerful. So basically, he's on crack. But Diana kills him with the God Killer sword, and the war doesn't end. Wait a second, Ludendorff was supposedly Ares, the bad guy. Wait a second, war doesn't end. Steve sums it up really well, actually, for Steve. He says, maybe people aren't always good. Diana wants to believe that people are good and that everything that is terrible in them is caused by Ares. She wants to believe that it's just that simple. After telling Diana to stay twice, in one sequence, she asks Steve to come with her to stop the gas, and she doesn't. I mean, the girl's consistent now. I mean, she's going to do what she's going to do. Samir and Chief and Charlie make a plan to follow the gas and to save the people. Meanwhile, Sir Patrick shows up, reveals himself to be Ares. Oh, look, Wonder Woman was right the whole time. Just believe in women. He does a little Emperor Palpatine speech. I'm not going to lie, okay? It gets a little Star Wars, join me together. We can, you know, collate our powers and destroy mankind for what they have done and all this kind of good stuff. And he is also like, you're the God Killer, just like, you know, Luke, I am your father. Sorry, spoilers from 35 years ago. But anyway, but just like Luke, this is why I don't like this ending, only because it's too Star Wars. Like, I needed something different, but I understand it's a movie. But like Luke, Wonder Woman does not join the dark side, but she does battle a dude with electricity fingers. See, very Star Wars. So while they battle, Steve is making the sacrifice play, because that's what Steve does, to detonate the plane loaded with gas in the air. So now I knew that Steve was going to die because he dies in the comic books like all the time. I don't think he's gone for good. Of course, he's in the trailer for the new one, so he's back in some way, shape, or form. I have no idea. Whatever, he dies all the time. It's still sad, though, because it is the conflict between two really bad decisions and choosing the decision that saves more people by, blowing yourself up in a plane. Now, Diana finally understands human complexity. That's what Steve's death is supposed to trigger. She chooses to believe in love, and she kills her brother, the god of war. That is her brother. That's the weirdness. especially if you have a brother issue. Luckily, I don't have a brother issue, but if you do, the movie's pretty good for that. And for a while, there is peace. So I wish that a comic book movie was right, and that all the evil in the world was the work of one god or one force. And if they were removed, then all of that bad would be gone. But the reality is, it's many forces, and it's overwhelming the ways humanity does terrible things to its own people. We are selfish, we are proud, we are naive, and we keep our heads down. We are cogs in the wheel, or we're lost in the matrix. And I wish it was like one guy to take out a Hollywood who sexually harasses women, but I know it's not. I wish it was one mass shooter to remove from society, but it's not. I wish it was one racist cop that you fire, but it's not. I wish it was just one ignorant person in political office, but it's not. As Steve says, we're all to blame. So Diana learns that humanity has a lightness and a darkness, and each of us have a choice of which to follow. And a superhero can't make us choose good or evil. All a superhero can do is live by example. And that's what Wonder Woman becomes, and that's what she decides to do. And that's why Wonder Woman is the superhero we've been waiting for. And my cat that just appeared in the background. But it only took 75 years to get a Wonder Woman story on screen. So yes, I actually finished almost on time. Sweet, I'm gonna open it up for questions and geeking out.